satellites in the skies broadcasting lies to billions of people. Cameras on the streets tracking who we meet. They call this liberty. What's it gonna take to make you realize you gotta fight to stay free? It's gonna take a spot to keep things on for the freedom revolution. Yeah, we're gonna take back control. We're gonna free our soul. Gonna take control.
All right, welcome to the Lesiak Report, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. I had a 2-week break from the show, so it wasn't on, and I kind of forgot how to do radio. But we will have a guest joining us really soon. Martin, he is, I believe he is a liberal, but okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add him to the conference call, and that should work. Hey, Martin, you on?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, we're live, libertymovementradio.com. So I guess, I mean, you're not like a famous political figure or anything, but if you want to, like, just give a really brief, I don't know, about yourself, you know, and your political views maybe, and we can go from there.
All right. Ideally, I'd like to stand on a point politically where we can work together to get stuff done overall, whatever makes movement, whatever makes some sort of progression, because to bounce it over to one side or another too far is obviously going to lead to some sort of problem. And so I'm really open to everything, just open to a good discussion. Economically, though, I'm a bit further left.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a libertarian, and I've been really kind of moving towards the radical end, like in the past couple of months, really. I started out as kind of a, conservative, I guess, more traditionalist, and I've been moving down, really fast in the libertarian direction, and the radio network we're on right now is pretty much all libertarians, some anarchists as well. So, but I don't know. What do you want to talk about? Because there's been a lot of stuff in the news lately.
Let's talk about moving forward. What's next for legislation and everything? What's next for business, and how are we going to work with this really diverging political spectrum that we see?
Because the House voted to repeal Obamacare for the 37th time a few days ago, and obviously a symbolic gesture. It's not going to get anywhere. So, I mean, there's quite a bit of gridlock, and I'm not really a fan of the Republican Party. I just view them as the lesser of two evils, really. So, I don't know. What do you think about this?
I just think it's one giant blame game, and if we're looking at passing healthcare policy on a national spectrum, we need to look at really what's best for everyone, because obviously this policy is a somewhat of a step, but to me it seems like more of a step backwards than anywhere else.
Yeah, and then, it seems as though what lately it's been coming out with kind of the IRS targeting the Tea Party, that whole controversy, and then whatever else the whole Benghazi thing is now like flaring up again. I mean, I view this really as just partisan BS that the Republican Party is just trying to, used to really attack Obama. The Benghazi thing really, it was a pretty, tragic thing. Have 4 Americans dead, but it was. I don't think Obama should be certainly impeached over that. I mean, the IRS thing. I mean, it seems as though, I can really see stuff like this going on in the Bush administration, and then would have been a completely different story. So what I view it basically as is just a bunch of partisan kind of playing around, and just to kind of deflect blame from one to the other, and not really get anything done. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, entirely. We need to stop slinging blame at each other because, again, nothing's getting done. We see stalemates, we see diversion, and no one's just into getting anything done. I have a question for you. What's your stance on healthcare in general?
Well, I mean, what I view, really is that it should be pretty much left up to the free market, as little government intrusion as possible. And, eventually I do think that, I think we should, what I view Obamacare as really is just a push towards universal health care. I think it's laying the foundation for that. And, I don't think, in my opinion, that universal health care has turned out well where it's been tried. So,
how so?
Well, here's the thing with universal health care is that, the concept that it's supposedly free, I really beg to differ with that, because there really is nothing that is free. You have taxpayers who are paying into the giant pool to, fund, healthcare services for the citizens and especially poor, but, nothing is really ever free. Taxes are going to this, and I don't think that, and I don't want this to come out of cruel, but I don't think that individuals have a right to housing and health care, and that's going to come off as, libertarians, you don't care about anything, you're selfish and all that. But I don't view it as that way. I just view it as like universal health care really is a massive form of coercion. Like you see Obamacare, you're seeing like these fines that are going to be paid, on businesses or individuals who don't purchase health insurance. In some cases, the fines I think are cheaper than actually purchasing health insurance for either yourself or your employees of your business. So I just view this as really, I guess, a government takeover of healthcare. It's something they should not really be involved in.
Okay. This is where I'm going to split with you, because I think people here in the States at least have a right to a home, and a right to health care. But where I will agree with you is the management of these sorts of programs. Would you agree with that statement?
What with what specifically?
That the American way of dealing with things such as social welfare with this universal health care isn't really effective.
Oh, currently? Yeah, I don't think it is. Yeah, we certainly have a great array of problems, Yeah.
All right, so what do you think is causing all of these problems?
Well, like I said, it really, it boils down to is that, my core beliefs really say that I think that, private individuals and private enterprise can always do a better job than the government in any facet of, social public life. So I think that really more government intrusion, more government intervention, and, Obamacare is, I went to like a speech, sponsored by this student group I'm a part of, Turning Point USA, and the guy rolled out like all the rules and regulations that are coming into effect with Obamacare, which is being implemented more and more with the passing months, and it's like a couple thousand pages, I think, of new rules and regulations, and I think we really, I think that's just it's going to, it's not going to lower the price of healthcare, and it's definitely not going to increase the quality of healthcare. Yeah.
Certainly. Programs like that really aren't going to do much for anyone or anything besides the insurance companies. But again, on the same sense, if you are a government, it's obvious to constitute a belief and to provide the security and safety for the people and to create for their best, to have the people in the best interest. And whilst it may not be the ideal solution for the government to get involved into certain things, certainly something has to be done because it's just the nature of the country. But we have to pay attention to the poor, and we have to pay attention to the sick, and we have to pay attention to things like that. But again, personally, I think there's better ways of going about it.
Yeah, really, I think that like Ron Paul talked about this, about the importance of private charity, and how back like in the 60s when he practiced as a physician in OBGYN, how hospitals like, private hospitals like Catholic hospitals or what have you would essentially provide, healthcare to poor people for free. And, that no longer is the case. I think that it just, my beliefs are basically that government, that government itself really is, I guess as Thomas Paine put it, at best it's a necessary evil, and at worst an intolerant one. So the more it can be minimized, the better. And eventually, it might be good to see it completely phased out, but I'm not really at the anarchist spectrum yet. So eventually, I'll probably get there though. By the time I'm a senior. So we'll see.
Just very quickly, I have a question for you. You were mentioning the different government is a necessary evil and stuff like that. Speaking of evils, let's look at prison systems. What's with that? What do you think?
Well, mainly I think the biggest problem is the war on drugs and how we have. I think it's at least 40% of the prison population is there for nonviolent drug offenses that essentially they're victimless crimes. There's no, you're there for putting something into your body or selling it or whatever. The war on drugs, that's a big issue. And I do think that federal prisons are pretty much a disaster. They're overcrowded. They're not really modernized. Like in Norway, you actually see prisons are kind of like rehabilitation places where I think the maximum prison sentence is 21 years, and they actually kind of live in really nice surroundings and are kind of rehabilitated to be better individuals. And the American prison system, to put it bluntly, it just sucks. So I'm not sure though that some libertarians would advocate really privatization of prisons. I'm not really completely sure on that, because essentially it would turn into corporations just using prisoners for slave labor. And I think you're already starting to see a little bit of that, how they're paid for, how they're doing work. Yeah. So
there were cases. I'm going to bring up a case right now. PA Childcare was this privatized children's prison, and somewhere in the East Coast, what they did was they paid off circuit judges to send kids in there, and the longer the kids were kept in there, the more they got paid from the government, and the more the judges got secret kickbacks from the company. So again, I would agree that privatization of prisons is definitely a mistake. In the same sense, though, having the highest incarceration rate per capita of any single country in the world is clearly an issue.
And I think that really, what it stems from the fact is, as a libertarian, I believe in the non-aggression principle, which basically states that you can do essentially anything, or that there is no really crime in doing anything as long as you're not violating the rights of others or harming others or killing them. So anything that you do that does not infringe on other people's rights, you should be allowed to do it. And that a major part of that is, smoking marijuana or doing any type of other drugs, including hard ones. So I think a problem is really the amount of laws and how absurd some of them are, and especially case in point is the marijuana prohibition, the drug prohibition.
Right. Why are hard drugs on your allow list?
Oh, like heroin and crack. Well, I mean, I just think that, there's different types of libertarians. Some are pragmatists who'd say, who would stop marijuana, tax and regulate, at age 18, or I think mostly it'd be 21. But I think that, individuals are, sovereign and they can make choices, and whatever they inject into their own body is their choice, and that's why I don't think it should stop marijuana. Now, I wouldn't be advocating that, at all, but
right.
I just believe that, yeah.
So, obviously marijuana is one thing, but comparing marijuana to heroin, that's an entirely different story, because when you look at it, really, those sorts of hard drugs, really, they earn their right to the name. Whatever people make in medic labs, it really destroys their lives to a certain extent. So, personally, I would pursue a more pragmatic approach to rehabilitation of these patients instead of incarceration. But on the same sense, I can agree with you on the fact that hard drugs should be legalized at any point in time because it doesn't make sense.
Well, and like I said, this is looking way down the road. I think that,
right.
I believe the Illinois legislature, I think they legalized, or they're moving towards legalizing medical marijuana in the state of Illinois. So that, depending on whether Governor Quinn signs that or not. So, really, I think the focus should be right now is marijuana legalization. I think that would, it wouldn't just, it would add a huge, really, economic boost, with the money it's going to make off taxing and regulating it. And it would just, the war on drugs has been an abysmal failure. It's contributed to crime and the importation of all these various dangerous gangs from, south of the border. So, yeah, I think marijuana legalization is really the major thing. And as for hard drugs, I know that I believe that Sweden or Norway are they're looking into legalizing heroin because they've been having a really huge problem with that. But yeah, that's not really something that I'm advocating for right away. It is a pretty radical notion, but so is the libertarian notion of completely abolishing the drinking age. That's also something that's talked about. So.
I'm sure you know that in Poland, the drinking age is pretty much non-existent.
And I think Switzerland, it's like 16, probably, and other countries, a bunch of other countries too. So, yeah. Right.
So, that stretches off culturally and everything. Let's talk about economics. What do you think economically?
Well, I'm not a Keynesian at all. I'm the polar opposite of him, and that would be the Austrian School of Economics, which is advocated by Ron Paul, Rand Paul, and pretty much every major libertarian in this country. So in essence, the minimal government intervention to completely numb, what Adam Smith wrote about in The Wealth of Nations, that the businesses should be, the freer businesses are to expand and grow and innovate, the better it is for the consumer, that essentially consumer is king, and that will really kind of dictate the wealth of the economy. So yeah, the minimal government intervention, and that includes the abolition of central banks, so the Federal Reserve. Well, because the Fed, what it's been doing, first of all, it's in my opinion, it's really what it boils down to is the Fed is a private banking cartel that really does not have much, or really doesn't have any congressional or federal oversight. They're free to lend money to other banks and other countries. Like, Ben Bernanke was questioned about this at a hearing. He had no idea where $6 trillion of Federal Reserve money went to, was loaned down to, and not just oversight. It's just that their ability to artificially regulate interest rates and things like that are completely, they contribute to this boom and bust cycle. And, the Federal Reserve really it really impedes economic growth. And
why?
There's an artificial, why?
Yes.
Because, well, here's the thing with the Fed. The fact that they're able to really, because in 1973, Nixon took us off the gold standard. So since then, money hasn't been backed by any sort of hard value such as gold. So, the Federal Reserve essentially, it can print, money at whim. There really is no really stopping how much money they can print and send into the circulation. And the problem with that is that with this inflation you're seeing, and it really is in my opinion just completely detrimental to economic growth.
Right. I'm super big on this macroeconomics kind of stuff, and so I know a bunch about the Fed.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you've taken AP Econ, and I'm going to take that eventually. Right. But I mean, then again, the textbook is written by Paul Krugman, at least the one that in my school. So
you have to understand. Mine wasn't, at least.
Okay.
You have to understand macroeconomically from that perspective. Once you see the course material, the reasons for the Federal Reserve start making a lot more sense. I'd have to digress on the fact that the Fed is some sort of capital crony institution, arguably just on the basis of what they're doing with the money supply, and arguably on the fact that we still have a penny to this day. They've done a fantastic job of controlling inflation and everything. They play with big amounts of money. They throw that around every single day. I mean, they're now starting quantitative easing number 3, where they're buying billions of assets per month in hopes of stimulating the economy. It's just an interesting tool to have. It's definitely, I would say that some sort of central bank is needed to control inflation and to control the value of the currency. And I would say that the Federal Reserve has done an all right job over the past couple of years. I mean,
there isn't really any sort of bipartisan, or even in the Republican Party, you only have maybe 5 or 6 congressmen really who are really supporting the abolition of the Fed. But I think a step in that is at least auditing it to know where they're lending money and what exactly is going on. Because, like I said, it really isn't a branch of the federal government. It really is its kind of own entity, and there really isn't much oversight. And despite the fact that the audit the Fed bill passed, I don't know really if it's been implemented in full force yet.
That's what makes the Fed so unique, is the general lack of political pressure on it. That's partially one of the reasons why it was established and run in that specific way, was to alleviate this tension and this pressure, because if you have people auditing it, if you have oversight and everything and dictating what the Fed can and can't do, you bring a fair amount of politics. And I'm sure you and I discussed this earlier, that this political climate really isn't favorable. And so if the Fed can operate free of that influence, it's definitely going to prove more advantageous for monetary policy to be carried out. On the same sense, though, I would like to see where exactly the money is going, and that information should be made just a bit more public.
Yeah, no, I agree. What about, I guess, shifting gears a bit, the IRS has been in the news recently for allegedly targeting Tea Party groups and stuff like that. Well, what do you think? Do you think the IRS should continue to exist? Do you think we should continue to have the income tax, or should we repeal the 16th Amendment and maybe try something like Gary Johnson advocated and still is advocating, called the fair tax, which is across the board 23% national sales tax?
The fair tax isn't fair, and I'm going to explain a very simple reason why. If you have people of different income spectrum, 23% on, let's say, a $10 on a $10 McDonald's meal, when you have a family making $20,000 a year, that takes out a significantly larger chunk of the income, as opposed to a family making $120,000 a year, and even then. And so, personally, I think the fair tax isn't fair, and that sort of flat tax system isn't going to work. Why? Is because it varies so much, and it's a regressive tax because it hits the poor harder than it hits the rich, for lack of better wording. I think the IRS personally should continue to exist, but I think this tax system needs reform, just to make those who have made that certain amount of money pay more and contribute more, because obviously we're sitting upon a nation of great people who've done a lot and people who've earned a lot, but they're trying to weasel their way out of giving back to the country that's provided the environment for them to grow. So,
yeah, I don't know enough about the fair tax. I don't really support it. In a sense, I do think it's a better alternative to what we have now, but I don't really like the idea of this across the board sales tax of such a high proportion. But yeah, I do think we got to get rid of capital gains and business taxes, because the business climate really, at least in some states like Delaware, it's pretty good. That's why you see so many Fortune 500 companies that have their headquarters there. But in other states, it really isn't friendly to business growth and expansion. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it varies state to state with business growth and business expansion, but capital gains taxes, I wouldn't split with you, and I think they need to be taxed more, and businesses in general need to be taxed more to that extent. But, hey, if we keep this current system, if we keep the current rates and we actually cut the loopholes and we make people and we make business institutions taxed by even the marginal rates of today, I think it's going to be a lot better solution than what's going on now, simply for the contribution's sake. But again, we need to work with business, not against it. We need to make sure the climate is favorable to business, but it also has to be favorable for the people, and where the states, again, do have enough money. So,
yeah, I guess Benghazi's been really, I guess, kind of in the news lately with the attack that happened there back in September. What's your really general view of, I guess, maybe current U.S. foreign policy, and especially pertaining to foreign aid and the money that we sent to countries, especially those that don't really view the U.S. favorably, such as Egypt and others?
Let's look at it from, again, I'm not too much of a foreign policy guy, so I can't really have an input on that overall wise, because I need to know more about that and more about where the money is going. But overall, if this aid is targeted to governments that need it more appropriately, you just have to look at the overall climate.
All right. Well, So have you been like following the recent WikiLeaks thing with Bradley Manning, or you're not really too familiarized with that?
What do you mean?
You know, with Bradley Manning, the U.S. Soldier who released thousands upon thousands of papers of documents essentially chronicling U.S. war crimes in the Middle East and Afghanistan and Iraq, and it was published on WikiLeaks, and now he's being really kind of tried for treason, I think, in a military tribunal, and he might be even facing a life sentence, or the prosecution might be seeking the death penalty. I'm not sure.
There's a fine line between free speech and treason, but I would argue that to some extent there needs to be a whistleblower to detail those war crimes, to detail everything. Unfortunately, the government got mad, and the price is going to be significant. Personally, though, I mean, something has to be detailed. If you hear the reports of these drone pilots, for example, this is a hotly debated topic. They're basically trained to kill. It's not exactly a favorable situation anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why the Republican Party really ticks me off is it really is their, I guess, foreign policy in general, and I guess kind of view on the world is that of America being completely superior to any other country, and that essentially other countries can be treated at whim by America. I mean, you saw the Iraq War, what a tragedy and really waste of human life that was. I mean, you have estimates of at least 200,000 Iraqis that perished in that, and then the high end is over 1 million, which is pretty unlikely. But I just think that what my point is that is that the Republican Party. Well, yeah, I guess I'm going to tie this back into the Republican Party. Is that one of the many reasons why I'm uncomfortable with it is its foreign policy, and I think it's not just unconstitutional, but I think it's really imperialist, and it's also pretty dangerous for the U.S. to be involved in all these conflicts and situations across the world, which are just really breeding resentment towards America. And they're not promoting. We shouldn't be exporting democracy at gunpoint. We should be trading with people and showing the world the beauty of freedom. Well, we don't really have that much freedom. Our freedoms are shrinking with the NDAA and the Patriot Act, and when you look at all the incarceration rate, again tying back to the criminalization of marijuana, I think that we should work on really fixing ourselves at home before we try to fix other countries across the globe. And when we try to quote unquote fix them, it usually has pretty disastrous results. And a good recent example is Iraq, and then Afghanistan really is going into mayhem, and there's no really end in sight for that conflict.
Right. What do you think about the defense industry and the absurd amount of money being spent on defense?
Yeah, I think it definitely needs to be lowered drastically. We have to. It's nice to see Rand Paul talking about this, and some Republicans are warming up to the issue of really slashing the overbloated Pentagon budget. But sorry, I was going to say something. Yeah, I mean, Eisenhower warned of the military-industrial complex in his farewell speech, and I think that you're really seeing that emerge right now. And really, I think, and this has been contended by many libertarian scholars and great minds of the libertarian movement, that war is essentially the health of the state, and war allows countries to kind of, I guess, maintain their, you could say, legitimacy in a way. And, war is also very profitable for multinational corporations, and especially the defense ones, So I'm generally, across the board, anti-war and support non-interventionism. Except I do support the concept of free trade, even though I oppose NAFTA and GATT and the WTO,
Right.
because I do think that is a form of managed trade, and it's not really as free as it should be. But yeah, I do support the concept of free trade.
Yeah, so with the defense industry, I mean, you hear stories coming out of, oh my God, people are going to lose jobs, people are going to, it's always brought focus on the poor, yet somehow you see contractors charging $65 for a $2 pipe fitting, and you really wonder if that money is being used as efficiently as it should be, which clearly it's not, and that's a major issue because it's the only thing it's defending right now is the defense contractors' pockets.
Oh yeah, and I think that in Iraq there were even more contractors really than soldiers on the ground, or at least it was an insanely high number. So yeah, no, certainly war. I mean, war. The people. I don't believe that the people ever really benefit from war, whatever countries are involved. I do think it has terrible consequences for the people, and this is why I don't believe that that World War II really propelled the U.S. out of the Great Depression. Now, I know that that's what you really thought in school, that because of World War II, the U.S. economy was able to get moving again. But, I mean, it really reminds me of an argument by Tom Woods, who's a very well-known historian and an economist. It really essentially is like... I mean, basically what warfare is somebody throws a rock through your window and you pay someone to go fix it. So, yeah, I don't really even view war as, it's kind of an artificial economic
boost.
Yeah, economic stimulation, if you can even call it that, because it's not long term, and once the conflict ends, it's not gonna, the factories aren't really gonna remain there and producing at the rate that they were.
Right, but again, here we see in the States that it's created an industry that arguably extends wars out as long as possible for that benefit. So. Yeah,
I mean, America is just a extremely heavily militarized nation. I think we spend more on
defense.
Yeah, than the next 7 countries combined, and that includes
25 actually.
25. Yeah, that includes China and Russia.
No, yes.
Yeah, so definitely something that has. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was the statistic I saw. We spend more than the top 26 countries combined, and then 25 of whom are allies. So it's an absurd number.
Yeah. I guess I'll kind of, since we're still talking about war, defense, and to an extent foreign policy, what is your take on the situation going on with Israel and Palestine?
Oh boy, Israel is just, I'm having issues with Israel and the way it's run, and the aggression towards Palestinians that's being exhibited. It's just not fair.
No, and I completely concur.
You hear reports of new chemical trucks being developed by the Israeli army that are spraying compounds on innocent protesters that burn eyes and make them reek for literally days, and it's gone too far, it's gone too long, and I'm just really tired of hearing all of it.
Yeah, I mean, Fox News will feed you the garbage about how Israel, it's legitimacy, and all Republicans, or most of them, say this, that it has to exist, we have to support, and then they feed you some sort of stuff from the Bible about how we're a nation on Judeo-Christian values, we have some sort of moral obligation to support Israel. Well, my problem with that is that I do think that Israel has been, what?
Go ahead.
No, I do think Israel's been mistreating the Palestinians. I mean, for example, look at the January 2009 Gaza. Well, it was called a war, but I think massacre is a more apt term because you saw over 1,400 Palestinians die in that. Israel used white phosphorus, and the Goldstein report came out where an international UN observer essentially concluded that they had committed war crimes. 1,400 Palestinians dead compared to 13 Israelis, 10 of which were security forces or IDF or something like that. And what's sad is that Israel, $3 billion a year goes to Israel from the pockets of U.S. taxpayers. So I would favor really ending that. And I do think there is a bias, I think, in general, towards Israel. I do think there has to be a two-state solution, and I do view Israel as being the aggressor, I think, for the most part, in that conflict.
Oh, yeah. It's just shifted to the broad oppression of those people.
Well, okay, on Israel, so this might be a good time. What I'm really interested in knowing is, I guess, your views on religion overall. Would you care to kind of start that off?
I'm sorry, where was the separation of church and state when with that moral obligation to support Israel? As far as I'm concerned, that was an entirely religious argument. Personally, though, I really want to see government as far away from religion as possible because it's not in anyone's best interest, besides religion's own, to be within the bounds of government. But it bothers me to see "God Bless America" banners hanging around every school and hanging in my high school's gym, and everything's so big, and the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God. Please, I want a separation of church and state.
Yeah, I do think the Pledge of Allegiance was written by a socialist. I'm not sure that. That's what I believe. I'm not sure that. I can't think of the name of the author, but yeah, back to this whole religion thing. I am I guess, semi-practicing to sporadically practicing a Catholic, but I'm really moving towards the concept of that in the future I just may move to pretty much agnosticism for the reasons that I just view religion as really a great way. Well, first of all, religion's been the cause of so much death and carnage across the globe. You're talking the Christian Crusades. You're talking with the whole how radicalized Islam, and I think religion isn't, besides being the cause of so much violence and carnage worldwide, it also is really a giant way to kind of control people. Yeah, that's what I really view it as, and I don't really think there's been convincing scientific evidence out there to show that that God exists, and I still believe that He does, but I think just the whole concept of organized religion really helps keep keeps the population docile and more obedient to government in general. Because
the minute you give population something to believe in that comes later in life, you can control the immediate and make them feel poor and sick and give them horrible circumstances to live in, because they'll all get paid off in the end. And that just makes me sick, because it's just horrible justification. Once again, I just disapprove of this entire nature of religion and the nation of religion with these groups and just constantly dominating. Why are churches even allowed to lobby? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Just keep churches out of it. I understand the tax benefits, but when you see churches like Willow Creek, local community church, starting their own corporations and everything, it seems like such a profound abuse of a concept that's in good nature. So I'd like to see that out of it. And I've been a Catholic. I've sort of moved away from it into more of an agnostic view. whereas you tend to view God more of as a force and less of it as a person. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've never really read the Bible. I mean, I read whatever little I know about the Bible, learned about it was through 8 or 9 years of Catholic elementary education. From first grade to 8th grade, I went to a private Catholic school, and I mean, from what I've seen on some kind of like libertarian atheist Facebook pages, or basically the Bible has things about, not just condemning homosexuality and saying that homosexuals should be stoned or killed or whatever, but also other really kind of radical and murderous concepts. And I'm just wondering that these Christian fundamentalists who take everything in the Bible so literally, I mean, it was a work of fiction, or at least much of it is, especially with the whole story of creation in 7 days and whatnot. And I don't know. Do you know any? Do you have like a more in-depth knowledge of the Bible and its?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to break the Bible for you within about 30 seconds. The King James Version of the New Testament was completed in 1611 by 8 members of the Church of England. There were and still are no original texts to translate. The oldest manuscripts we have were written down hundreds of years after the last apostle died, and there are over 8,000 of these old manuscripts with no two alike. The King James translators used none of these anyway. Instead, they edited previous translations to create a version their king and parliament would approve. So 21st century Christians believe the Word of God is a book edited in the 17th century from 16th century translations of 8,000 contradictory copies of 4th century scrolls that claim to be copies of lost letters written in the 1st century. That's not faith, Chris. That's insanity.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I haven't read. I don't know really anything about the Quran, but I mean, I do know that a lot of people say that it claims some pretty really things that are quite out there, and the same thing could be said about the Jewish Talmud, which I don't think it's their. I think the holy book of the Jews is the Torah, but the Talmud is one of their, I guess, more philosophical or it's just another holy book. But I don't know. It seems like there's a pattern with these major organized religions that it kind of makes you shaky and wonder: is religion really that good for mankind?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's definitely a present factor. Again, it's just a method of control for people. See, Ricky Gervais tweeted something interesting. If all the atheists and agnostics left America, they'd lose 93% of the National Academy of Sciences and less than 1% of the prison population. So it's interesting, the correlation between religion and science.
Yeah, no, I saw that too. That people who really do things that are, I guess, generally regarded by society as immoral or bad, commit murder, fraud. There are like politicians who are, pretty sure every politician who's been involved in an extramarital affair is probably Christian, and obviously the part about, fidelity to your spouse, that didn't really strike much of a chord to them. There is a lot of, I guess, hypocrisy in the political world, and I guess it's maybe more blatant in the Republican Party. And you just see, for example, like you have Republicans opposing gay marriage, which I honestly I think 50 years from now, opposition to gay marriage is going to be viewed like what you had with the segregation down in the South. It's going to be viewed as completely absurd. What the hell? Why did it take so long for basic rights to be given to all citizens? I don't think that people should or anyone should try to legislate morality, especially through government. Ideally, I'd like to see kind of the government get out of marriage altogether, but as long as it does provide marriage licenses, it absolutely should be given to all consenting couples.
Right. So, definitely, it's been an interesting discussion, I believe. It's 10 o'clock right now, I think.
Yeah, we're coming up soon. I think there's about 6 or 7 minutes left. I don't know if you want to hold on.
Yeah, I'll stay on.
Yeah, for another 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I don't know. Is there anything you want to? I mean, we've covered a good amount of ground. Is there anything that you want to add? Go back to. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about education.
Okay.
What do you think? Because personally, I mean, you've seen it. You've seen the AP program. You've seen the College Board working in high schools. You've seen tuition rates actually soar up 300%, and that's adjusted for inflation. You're seeing colleges become a lot more corporate games about names and connections as opposed to actual institutions of learning. The cost of a degree has gone up absurdly. And high schools, so much of an emphasis is being placed on standardized tests that really fail to measure some kids and their potential and their intelligence. And again, art's being cut. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I have a friend who, is incredibly smart. He took, he's a senior, he's graduating this year, and he was in all AP classes. He had outstanding grades, but yeah, standardized testing wasn't really his thing. He got, I think, a 25 on the ACT, and most of the AP tests he took, he didn't get a 5. He got a 3 or 4. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, there's got to be education reform. Really, what I would look at it is, I guess, decentralization, and that constitutionally the federal government shouldn't really have any role to play in education. And I mean, as a libertarian, I do believe that a lot of departments in the federal government should be abolished, and that does include the Department of Education.
Right, but with the same extent, we need to again form some sort of way to get education across without all this, the red tape and standardizing. So.
No, I mean, I agree because when you look at it, if it's completely decentralized, and you just have local school districts everywhere making their own decisions and curricula and whatnot, how are you going to measure educational success on a national scale, right? How is it going to be? How are you going to be able to compare when, for example, I don't know if you saw this in South Carolina, there was like a 4th grade science test where they
right.
Did you see that? Where
yeah,
it was about creationism and how long did it take God to create the earth, and about the dinosaurs, and again that ties back into the separation of church and state, really. And then I guess, what is your basic, view of education in general?
Let's cut out the standardized testing and let's start paying teachers like doctors, and with a lot higher pay scale, so we improve their standing socially, and so we turn institutions of learning into actual institutions of learning where we see kids that aren't limited by their peers by some standardized tests, and we can foster individual growth. So when they do well, when they proceed, when they present college applications, then colleges can somehow, through their writing, through the way the application is filled out, they can determine the intelligence, and they can determine the strengths and the weaknesses of the student, instead of just playing a game of numbers, ideally.
Yeah. Education isn't really. It's not something I know enough about, I guess, to really have that much of an opinion on it. But I don't know. It does seem that a lot of it really there's there's a heavy emphasis placed on just rote memorization and stuff like that, and that critical thinking is kind of, I don't know, maybe not as emphasized. What do you think?
Right. Again, I'm more of a liberal arts person, and I like to take the focus away from science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and start helping people and create a job front for people who express abilities in different ways. But again, that all depends on the job climate at hand.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess you're on your school's debate team, right?
Right.
Well, what's the most interesting thing you've argued, or the thing that maybe you're most passionate about? We might have gone through it, but
personally, we were at downstate in Bloomington, Illinois, and one of these bills came up about depression and anxiety treatment and psychological evaluations for children in schools and pronouncing that more. That was something I was hit by. I mean, God, I had a knife up to my arm in 7th grade.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So let's get that stuff pushed through, because I don't want to go through that again. I don't want anyone to experience what I did on that extent.
No, I've never had a knife up to my throat, but there's at least been 2 occasions where I did feel like I did want to end it all, and I don't think that because I've experienced the mental health system in America firsthand. I don't think that it's really adequate, and
not in the slightest.
I don't know how effective psychotropic drugs are and antidepressants, but I do think there has to be a lot of reform in that, and I think it can start in high schools, really, because high schools often, I guess, at least in my experience, is kind of a bewildering place, and it can really get you lost and completely, messed up in a way.
Right. Ideally, we need to get rid of big pharma. Big pharma. We need to get rid of that regulation. We need to get rid of that corporate monopoly that these corporations have, that they can nickel and dime people for absurd amounts on for medicines that they really need to survive. I know in countries like India, if they see the drug as important enough to benefiting people's lives, then they'll pass laws prohibiting exclusive control over it, and they'll make it generics available all over. So that needs to be taken into account too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it just, I don't know. I don't really have, I guess, kind of a really plan to kind of fix the whole system, but yeah, no, I do agree that there should be a major overhaul of it, and when you see, like, for example, like in the military, this is kind of different, like with the post-traumatic stress disorder, but you actually saw, I think, maybe like 350 combat deaths in 2012, and then like 370 military suicides. And yeah, that is a different situation than civilians, face. But I think it boils down to that the mental health system in America really isn't adequate, and especially so in prisons, which can really lead to insanity in some cases.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Yeah, well, looks like we're done. Yeah, thanks. All right. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Martin. I think it was a good discussion, and.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right.
Have a good night.
Yep.